Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. We appreciate you tuning in every day, Monday through Friday. When I first started fishing on what was then the FLW tour, one of the biggest techniques that guys used was the shaky head. I mean, there were all sorts of guys that were shaky head masters, and when fishing conditions got tough, they would throw a shaky head. Nowadays, and granted, part of this is because of forward-facing sonar, but nowadays you don't hear about anybody throwing a shaky head. What's the big craze? It's the Neko rig. Has the Neko rig really made the shaky head obsolete? We'll talk about it when we come back. Welcome back to Mark Fisher Outdoors, everybody. I'm Mark Fisher. So yeah, like I said, I grew up throwing a shaky head. When I first got on the pro circuit with FLW, shaky heads were a big deal, man. If you wanted to either, a lot of guys would be power fishing. If you wanted to kind of go with a finesse approach where you were going to be able to kind of get those fish that weren't biting, moving baits and things like that, you take a little shaky head. This happens to be a flick shake, just any kind of a worm. I've done shaky heads with Cincos. I've used other types of worms, Zoom trick worms, things like that, but this is just a little flick shake, and you put it on any kind of a shaky head jig, and kind of, this one's got a screw lock in there. You take the bait, put it over the hook, expose it so that it's weedless, and that bait falls down, gives your bait sits on the bottom, tail kind of, as you draw it along, it goes, it's a standard. But nowadays, it's the Neko rig. Same kind of look. I mean, the reality is if these two baits are falling, they look identical. They both have a weight, and I've actually rigged these two baits up so that they're identical. Same color, same weight head. When they land on the bottom, they're both going to land like this. The difference with the Neko is that because the hook is rigged, this one I have on a collar, and because it's rigged in the center instead of the line coming down from here, when you pull that bait, it's actually moving from the center. And it gives that worm, that little shaky head worm, more of an undulating kind of look, almost like a wacky rig Cinco would, as when you pull the center and it kind of pulsates. So as this bait is sitting on the bottom, when you pull it, it moves from the center, which creates the tail here, and this drags, and then when it comes back down, it sits back down. It's actually a better look. So you have not only a little bit more lifelike or better look, fish catching kind of look, but the other benefit to the Neko rig is that because that line tie is up towards the center of the bait, when you're fishing around shallow rocks, that weight is not going to get hung up on rocks like it would with a shaky head. When you have the shaky head weight and everything is up front and attached here, and your line is coming from the weight, now when you're pulling that line, you're moving it this way. And all you have to do is get that line caught in a rock crevice or something like that, and now you're going to get snagged. And at that point, the Neko is completely snag proof. When you pull it, it just comes straight out. If this were my snag, it would just pull right up, as opposed to here, where because it was up against the rock and the line was coming over, it would get snagged in there. So not getting snagged on rocks is a big benefit for the Neko. Giving it a little bit more or a different lifelike approach, another big benefit for the Nako. The reality is, even when you're not around rocks, what happens with a shaky head a lot is that, let's say you're in a silty kind of bottom. Well, at that point, you're dragging it along and you're ending up getting the head kind of mucked up with that silt and things like that. And so that creates a less lifelike or less natural appearance as well. In my opinion, there is a lot of reasons that the Neko Rig is actually a more effective bait to throw than a shaky head. Now, I will say the biggest difference that I can see or that I can talk about between a Neko and a shaky head is the one, if I wanted, I could get a shaky head jig that probably goes up to 3/4 of an ounce. I'm not going to get a nail weight or a half moon weight that's that heavy to be able to go in here. So if I'm fishing deeper, one of two things is going to happen. Either I can use a shaky head with a heavier weight, it'll get down faster and I'll be able to work it, or I'm going to have to spend a lot more time letting this bait fall to the bottom before I start to work it. So if you're working in deeper water, a shaky head still may have a little bit of an application, a little bit of a better application, should I say, than a Neko rig. Now, there is one situation that the Neko rig doesn't really work as well as a shaky head. Let's say that I'm throwing into a brush pile. Maybe I'm in 13 feet of water, I'm thrown into a brush pile, and I really want to work that little finesse flick shake worm in and around a brush pile. If I've got limbs and that shaky head goes in here and then it's pulling around, because of the fact that my hook point is buried in my worm, I can pull that up and work it into another branch and work it into another branch, and I can actually work a shaky head and shake that shaky head when it's on the bottom and then move it up over the branches and drop it in again more effectively than if I had a Neko rig. Because with a Neko rig, when I pull it and I let it go, when I pull it up again, it's going to get snagged. That point is exposed. So that is a bad time to be working a Neko rig. However, the reality is, in that situation, I might just do a variation of the Neko rig using the chicken rig, which we talked about in an episode about a year ago. I'll put a link to that in the description if you want to go back and look at the chicken rig. But the chicken rig is basically a Neko rig with a buried hook that allows you to throw into brushy cover and things like that. So even in that situation, I'm not sure that I would be throwing a shaky head as opposed to a version of a Neko rig called the chicken rig. So it gives you a lot to think about. Guys, I would love to hear your opinions on this. Do you still throw a shaky head? Is it just because of habit, or do you or is it something that the shaky head has that the Neko rig doesn't? At this point, I would say I throw a Neko rig a lot more than I used to throw that shaky head. Love to hear from you guys. Hope that you would hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. And we'll be back tomorrow with another episode of Mark Fisher Outdoors. Take care, everybody.